I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here at the Copenhagen Hub Pavilon, delighted to be joined now by Ivan Hodac. He's the Secretary General of the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. Tell me a little bit about why you're here in Copenhagen.
Well, we are here to show that we care, that we obviously are part of the problem, but we are also part of the solution. And if we are talking about climate change, if we are talking about goals in 2020, 2030, 40 and beyond, the automobile industry is clearly part of the solution.
So tell me how you see your organization, how you see the automobiles as part of the solution. What can they do? What can these companies do?
Well, we are developing more and more new cars that are more eco-friendly, that are almost carbon-free, electro vehicles, cars that drive on alternative fuels, and basically cars that will pollute much less in the future and that will have much lower CO2 emissions. And this is an ongoing process. We have been doing it and we will continue to do it and we will step up the efforts.
How do you see the money as part of the solution? Because we've obviously seen with car manufacturers around the world, it's at the time of an economic crisis. It hasn't come at a great time for many of these companies. How can you spend all the money developing these cars at a time when your company is so tight?
Well, that's one of the problems which we have. We have invested enormous amount of money and we continue, but we need the government to help us. We cannot do it alone. We need incentives from the governments. We need also investment in infrastructure. It's not the car only. It's an integrated approach. It's the consumer, it's the government, and also the fuel industry has to come to the table. So it's not something that can be done by the car industry only. The car industry brings the technologies to the table. That's fine. But we need also incentives for R&D from the governments, we need investment in infrastructure, and we need alternative fuels.
Can you give me an example of where we've seen a very successful partnership, for example, between a government and an automobile company in terms of getting the right amount of funds, getting the R&D going and producing a vehicle?
We see it very much in Japan. The Japanese government, when it sets standards that the industry has to reach, also puts the money behind it. It's not that the Japanese government will invest and fund the whole R&D. The industry does a bulk of it, but I think the government is there as well. I'm not saying that the European Union is not doing it. We see that both at the level of the European Union, the Commission, and some of the member states, that are money that are made available for R&D in new clean technologies. But we see clearly that the Japanese are unfortunately ahead of us.
I've had the chance to test drive the Tesla Roadster, which was a fantastic car. I've seen some hydrogen cars in London, but very few. So we've got the G-Wiz in London as well. When do you think we will see this sort of sea change in terms of when automobiles run on renewable energy, whether it's electricity, hydrogen, biofuel, will really start to take to the streets in droves?
Well, we are not going to see a sea change immediately. It's going to be a gradual process. I think that by 2020 we will have anything in the range of 10% of the new fleet will be e-vehicles, electric vehicles, vehicles that might drive on hydrogen and new hybrids, but it's going to be a gradual process. But we will see also more fuel-efficient vehicles of the classical style. The diesel and the petrol engine will be made fuel-efficient, so you'll see a gradual change. I think the main kind of thrust of the whole thing, they are there for 2030, 2035. It's not only the technology. I think the technology is there, but it's the infrastructure. You have to recharge the vehicle somewhere. You have to build the infrastructure and you have to produce the electric energy, if we are talking about electric energy, or for that matter hydrogen. And if you don't produce it from renewables, if you produce it from the old fossil fuels, well, we can as well forget it because the cycle will be again negative.
It's interesting, there's places like Project Better Place in California that are providing, they're working at making stations where you could switch out the battery. Are you seeing that kind of thing coming into Europe as well?
Absolutely. We will see stations where you will change the batteries. We will see stations where you will recharge the batteries. You will recharge the batteries at home. You will recharge them in your office, and you will recharge them at the filling stations. Today it takes too long time. On average, the driver stops for 15 minutes at a filling station. You don't recharge the car in 15 minutes, but you can swap the battery in 15 minutes. And there are a number of companies that are working on a kind of a double system, swapping the batteries and recharging the batteries. So it will come very quickly, but we need standardization. We have to make absolutely sure that the Europeans, the Japanese and the Americans are working the same direction, because if you start developing different cars in the United States, in Japan and in Europe, it will again slow down the whole development. So we have to work, all of us together, not only at the level of the European Union, but also United States and Japan.
Ron, thanks so much for coming in. It's fascinating stuff. I'm quite interested in the whole electric, hydrogen, alternative fuel car. So thanks very much for coming into the Hub Pavilion here in Copenhagen. And I'm Edie Lush.
You're welcome.